Little Bo Peep has lost her sheep. I can't tell where to find it. Go! Leave them alone and they'll come home. I'm bringing their tails behind them.
Hi, my name is Tamara Laschek, and you're listening to the Bo Peep Podcast, where men are women, women are men, and the sheep are confused. Now let's see if we can make sense of this crazy world. Hi, Cara. Welcome to the program. I'm thrilled to have you here. So I want to talk a little bit first about your background and give our audience an introduction to who you are. Now, your name is obviously Cara Castronuova, and I know that you are a fighter, a champion boxer, and you definitely bring all that into every aspect of your life. You are a political activist. You've done some amazing work. You are a media personality and an investigative journalist and a former political candidate. I know you ran for office in New York, same position that I ran for. So tell us a little bit more about who you are, and then I have a lot of questions to ask you.
Sure. So thank you for the introduction. Yes, I did just run for office, New York State Assembly District 22 here in New York. It was a great experience because as a journalist, citizen journalist, I really consider myself, even though I do work for the Gateway Pundit and I'm on a Newsmax show. I started off as a citizen journalist, and I don't consider myself to be part of the mainstream media on any level, nor do I ever want to be. But I learned a lot about government and the way things work when I ran for office. And I was actually able to talk to people on a face-to-face, eye-to-eye level to really understand what people want, what they want to hear, what they want to talk about, what their feelings are and their sentiments are towards certain culture wars that we have going on right now, certain things in politics. So I really, really am very grateful for the experience. Even though I didn't win, my district is very Democrat. It's 72, I think, percent Democrat. I won 43% of the vote, which is a very big accomplishment. I know that it was, but it's a pretty hard district to win. It's been held by the same person for the past 6 terms, and before that by a Democrat for another 10 years since its inception, I think, of this district. So it would have been nearly impossible to win, but I think that the experience was worth it.
Yeah. What I also found in running is that it's like small steps. You may have lost your election, but maybe somebody after you is going to make more progress.
But before I was in politics, I was a boxer, and I really feel like that gave me like this mental mindset to be able to really persevere through very, very hard work that we're doing right now in journalism that I'm doing, which is extremely tiring and exhausting mentally.
Mm-hmm.
I thought boxing was hard.
Yeah.
It's really not compared to this.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a very tough arena for sure. And that's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about, the work you're doing. So we spoke before on January 6th, and I really wanted to focus because there has been so much uncovered since we last spoke. But for our audience, I want to get everybody up to speed on what is going on, because we know that the mainstream media has branded this an insurrection and, the storming of the Capitol and everything else. So let me first ask you, how many people were arrested for January 6th?
Well, there were last, at the end of the year when we did the tally, it was about, I'd say 900, over 900. But what people don't realize is there's people being arrested every day still. Mm-hmm. I think there's on average about 4 people a week getting arrested. An article just came out. I didn't get to read it yet, on somebody that was just arrested today. And now they're going how many more people are they going to arrest before they start coming after people that were literally just standing there on the lawn taking pictures like me? Or not even on the lawn, I was on the sidewalk, or people that were marching that day, or people that went to go see the rally. I mean, the Department of Justice has said that they want to arrest, I think, at least 3,000 to 4,000 more people this year. Merrick Garland has pledged to do that. The omnibus spending bill at the end of last year gave the Department of Justice, I think, an additional $250 million to continue to persecute and arrest January 6th people that went to the protest. So I get the report every day, and I'm subscribed to the report from the Department of Justice. Whenever they arrest the January 6th person, they actually put it out like they're bragging about it. Oh, we arrested somebody else. And this is happening I think every other day. I think they arrested at least 4 people every week since this year started. And again, these are people that a lot of them didn't go in the building.
Yeah.
The FBI is showing up at people's homes, pulling them out in their underwear, terrifying the living daylights out of their neighbors, friends, and family, ruining their lives, throwing them in DC Gitmo. A guy I think he got arrested on December 23rd. I think he was I spoke to his attorney. He was from San Francisco, a gay man from San Francisco. And they bounce them around from jail to jail. They're finally putting him across the country this month. And he's going to DC jail, which I call DC Gitmo because it's similar to Guantanamo Bay. So he's going to be there pre-trial. And it took them 2 years to arrest this man. 2 years to arrest him, and God only knows how long down the line his trial is going to be, because half of the guys that are sitting there in pre-trial detainment, there's a lot of men that are still sitting in jail pre-trial, haven't even had their trials yet, and they're not even scheduled. So I can only imagine where these people that they're now arresting, what happens to a speedy trial? It's no longer exists in America, at least if you're a January 6th or a Trump supporter.
Yeah. How many people are still in jail? When we last spoke, which was about, I think, 8 months into it, there were about 650 people. How many people are still in jail?
I'd say right now, pre-trial, there's about 100 in jail. It's really hard to keep tabs of people still in jail because it's not like it's not like the Department of Justice is putting out that information. Like, we actually have to track them down. My organization tracks them down. There's a vigil that Ashley Babbitt's mother does, who's on the board of my organization, Citizens Against Political Persecution, outside of DC jail for the guys in there every night. And we have a list that she reads every night of all the prisoners still in there. And it's like we're literally tracking them down. There's men in there. There's men in Virginia. There's men in Alexandria Penitentiary, Northern Neck in Arlington, all these other jails. Plus, in different jails across the country. There's a guy in Brooklyn right now. Jake Lane just got moved to Brooklyn. So they're now splitting them all up. So they're not in. They used to have them all in DC jail where they were all condensed, but I guess they thought that was too dangerous to have all these men together. So now they split them all up around the country, and it's really hard to track. Again, like I said, these people all pre-trial, and most of them have been in jail since January 6th of 2021. So that's going on over 2 years now. And a lot of the reasons why there are some of them that are no longer there is they've pled out, which I think that most people would do if they were being tortured literally in a cell all day long, with no trial in sight, no access to their friends or family in person. They only started having visitations in person only last week or the week before. So they went 2 years without seeing friends and family, which is unheard of. When people are in jail, even the most worst murderers, rapists, and convicted killers have meetings with their wives and their family and their children. So these guys weren't even being allowed that. So a lot of them wound up just plea dealing, and a lot of the guys that said at the beginning, "I'll never take a plea," wound up taking pleas. Some of them were even cooperating, unfortunately, against their co-defendants, because that's what they were literally forced into a corner to have to do. And it's very sad to watch and see. So a lot of guys have pled out.
Yeah. And what were most of them charged with? I mean, again, when I read those arrest warrants, I read 650 of them when we last spoke, and I didn't see anything other than misdemeanors. It was all disorderly conduct. It was all trespassing. Nothing, was anybody arrested for insurrection?
Well, everything was disorderly conduct and trespassing for the most part, and that's what a lot of people are arrested for. They've tacked on, obviously, trumped up charges now that are illegal. They're not even real charges, like obstruction of justice, which carries a 20-year penalty. There's certain groups like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. Oh, this is actually just the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys that have been charged with seditious conspiracy. They need a group or an organization to say that there was a conspiracy. So they've chosen a drinking fraternity, who are the Proud Boys, unfortunately and unluckily for them, who are just a bunch of guys who are bragging and using a lot of hyperbolic speech, who were marching that day. But the way the government is spinning it was they came in gear to overturn Congress and to take over the government. And they were in cahoots somehow with Donald Trump. They were taking orders from him magically, even though there's absolutely no proof of this whatsoever. And they've tacked on seditious conspiracy, which is almost like treason. It's a terrible thing to actually charge somebody with. And they found the Oath Keepers so far have been 2 groups of Oath Keepers have been found guilty of seditious conspiracy. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's almost, it would be almost like a comedy if it wasn't so diabolical.
Yeah.
Just how ridiculous it is to believe that a group like the Proud Boys would be even capable.
Yeah.
They've said themselves, we can't even barely organize a bar night where we all show up at the same bar at the same time. How did we organize seditious conspiracy? So it's so ridiculous. And nobody's watching these trials. Nobody's seeing these trials. I'm one of the only persons who actually got to witness part of the Proud Boy trial. It's still going on. I wish I could still be there. I'm back in New York now. I will go back down when the defense starts, but this is a 1.5 month long trial.
Yeah.
The fake news media doesn't show up. And if they do, they'll send the New York Times or the Washington Post. They'll stay for an hour. They'll take a couple notes on what the prosecution said, not on what the defense said. And then they'll just publish something the prosecution said like it's the truth. And that's how they report on it. So only citizen journalists like me and a few others have been down there watching. And I can't believe that I'm one of the only people sitting in the courtroom. I look around, I'm like, this is unbelievable.
Has anybody even been arrested with any lethal weapons or, possession or anything like that?
No, not really. There's a few that have been accused. One of those lethal weapons was a walking stick with a taser on it that didn't have batteries in it. So obviously this person couldn't use this walk. So Barnett, who was just found guilty on all charges when he's just like a clown who went into the Capitol, Richard Barnett was found guilty. I was there when the jury found him guilty on all charges. And one of those was having a deadly weapon. It looks terrible on paper, but if anybody looks into the case, the deadly weapon was his walking stick that had a taser on the end of it and had no batteries in it at the time. So that's the deadly weapon that they're accusing him of having that he never used, but he had it on his person. He's the one, he was kind of sitting on Nancy Pelosi's desk laughing with his feet up.
Okay.
And there was like conveniently a Washington Post photographer and a New York Times photographer there to take the picture, who it was brought out in court and proven were egging him on to put his feet up and telling him to pose for the picture. So like they had these photographers in there, and then these pictures became very, very famous and viral. Oh, look at this horrible guy sitting at Nancy Pelosi's desk, when you can clearly see he thought it was a joke the whole time. He was laughing, it was in jest, but they're making like he was this horrible, seditious, conspiratorial person who just actually walked into the Capitol. I guess he trespassed. I guess he could be found guilty of trespassing, and just was acting like a clown, putting his feet up, being egged on by reporters to take these photographs, and who was actually asked by a police officer or an FBI agent in the building to take a selfie with him in Nancy Pelosi's office. And this person lied on the stand and said that he did not do that and did not ask him to take a selfie. And then the video emerged of this person asking him to take a selfie. So they had to bring this guy back on the stand and say, let us refresh your memory. Did you ask him to take a selfie? And he said, oh, yeah, I did. So it's like all of this stuff America isn't seeing.
Yeah.
The jury is seeing, the jury is biased, and they're still finding these people guilty. But if America was seeing this, they would be going crazy right now.
Yeah. In terms of these prisoners and their rights being violated, because this is what I think is also really important. I know a lot of people who are brainwashed by the media. They say that these people are insurrectionists. This storming of the Capitol is worse than 9/11, all the narrative. Okay. But why your average American should care about this is the rights that we have as U.S. citizens are being violated.
Right.
Talk about some of the rights that these prisoners are not getting and what every American should worry about in this January 6th situation.
Well, it goes down to really, if it could happen to them, it could happen to anyone. And I've always said that since the very beginning. When you start labeling American citizens as domestic terrorists or terrorists, then what happens is people will start, and it's already happening, pass legislation similar to the Patriot Act, which will strip all Americans of our rights. Like when we were so, back in when there was the quote unquote war on terror, everybody was so excited about the Patriot Act and it turned to fight these terrorists. But it turns out that we traded in privacy, we traded in due process rights, we traded in freedom of speech, so many civil liberties. So that's one reason why people should care, because they are writing legislation as we speak to combat white supremacy and domestic terrorism from happening again, like what happened on January 6th, which was a false flag. January 6th was nothing but a riot, at worst.
Yeah, well, so was 9/11, quite honestly. That's another podcast. It's
another podcast, but it was at worst a riot, and at best, what I believe was a beautiful protest. For the most part, again, where people from all walks of life came from all over the country. And protested. I think it was the biggest political protest of anybody that's alive's lifetime. I really do believe that. And parts of it became out of hand. And I do believe that was because of agitators, infiltrators, and provocateurs that were not Trump supporters.
Right.
Which is yet to be proven, but is slowly coming to the light. And the government is trying with all of their might to hide this in many ways by trying to steal records. And we could get into how the government.
We're going to get into that, but
people should care, and minority communities. So then you got the leftists saying, "Oh, they're white supremacists. They deserve it." They, ha ha ha, like almost pointing fingers. Now, this is you guys, not on us. Not realizing like if what a lot of leftist activists say is true, and minorities are disproportionately arrested and persecuted by the Justice Department, they should be the most worried, because judicial precedent is being set right now that is absolutely despicable and unheard of, where due process is being trampled on. People are getting thrown in jail for protesting.
How so? Talk about due process being trampled on, particularly in this January 6th
speedy trial. People are in jail for 2 years now. The right to a speedy trial, the right to see discovery. Like a lot of these guys don't even see their discovery before they go into trial. Ability to meet with a lawyer, ability to have actual meetings with your family, which keeps you sane in the mind for trial. But to go to a trial and to stand up for yourself for the fight of your life, whatever crime it may be, you have to be right in the mind. And when you're thrown into a little cell in solitary confinement, denied being able to go to church, denied being able to see your family, denied being able to see your lawyer, you're going to slowly lose your sanity, and you're probably going to take a plea bargain you wouldn't have taken otherwise. When you're being held in jail pre-trial, you're not going to be able to be able to defend yourself the way you would if you were outside, able to do your own research, able to communicate with your lawyer, able to be sane in the mind. You're going to make bad decisions. So the fact that you're able to throw men into jail now, pre-trial, 2 years, going on to past 2 years now, is nothing that's ever been heard of before. Yeah. Like, this has never happened before. The Proud Boy trial, there's confidential human sources and FBI infiltrators that there's more of them than there are actually Proud Boys on trial, similar to the Michigan Whitmer case.
Yeah.
The government is filing under a sealed motion that the defense attorneys are not allowed to question these confidential human sources when they're brought to the stand. Like, who's ever heard of this? Is a kangaroo court. Who's ever heard of it? So the defense is not allowed to question witnesses now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're literally changing the way that the judicial system works, and it was always rigged, and it was always really bad. I'm finding that
this is what we found.
Going to be worse.
This is what we found when they did the congressional hearings. There was no cross-examination. It was all one-sided, and they created a bipartisan committee, which was, Liz Cheney. I mean, hardly bipartisan. So, I think it was more represented by the Uniparty. So
people think that. To your point, people think that this is the power pendulum doesn't swing. It does. And these same laws that are being used now, and these same policies they're using now towards these January 6th can be used by another party in the future against their political opponents.
Yes. And
so
people need
scary thing.
100%. And people really need to think about this. I've gotten into debates with people on Facebook on this whole Alex Jones thing. And people were like, Alex Jones deserves, blah, blah, blah. He should be censored. And, they asked me if I believe he should be censored. And I said, no, I believe in free speech. And they're like, even though he spews venom. And I go, yeah, I still believe in free speech. The free speech is there to protect the offensive speech. It's not there to protect everybody who agrees with you. It's to protect those offensive speeches and even hate speech. Okay, that's why we have protection of freedom of speech. It's a slippery slope when you start saying, well, they deserved it because they did this, and they shouldn't have rights because they did this. Because again, you're treading in very dangerous territory, and people need to take a pause and think about what our rights are there for and why they're there to protect us. And again, if they're not there for everyone, they're there for no one.
They used to be that old, classical liberal. And I do I think that a lot of people get mistaken for conservatives that are actually classical liberals. It's really weird and bizarre. People that are like free speech absolutists and constitutional, believe in really free speech at all costs. I am similar, that I believe that hate speech is protected. We're living through to the point where you're called a white supremacist arbitrarily if you say that, you believe in due process, or you believe that Alex Jones should have free speech, or you believe that somebody could question 9/11. Oh, you're a white supremacist. It's like you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist. We need to censor you. So It's like this total weapon. So if you don't, you have to be able to tolerate hate speech, because it could be used, like I said, they could call what your speech is hate speech. It's subjective. Yeah. It's becoming a political weapon. And it never was supposed to be that way. And there was an old saying, I'll fight to the death. I might not agree with you, but I'll fight to the death for your ability to be able to say what you believe. Like, if somebody has hate speech, I'm tolerant of their hate speech, because when you start censoring hate speech,
Agree.
then it's like a falling deck of cards.
Downward spiral.
everybody's rights are getting
Absolutely.
censored.
Absolutely. Now, so back to January 6th. How many people died on January 6th? Because I don't think majority of the people know how many people died.
So 4 people died. No officers died that day.
Yeah.
4 Trump supporter protesters died on January 6th. They think that they're saying the right thing when they say only 1 person died that day.
Ashley Babbitt. Mm-hmm.
No, 4 people died that day.
Yeah. And who are these people and what did they die from?
Roseanne Boyland was the other female that died that day. And I worked a lot on her story. I actually brought it to the light a year and a half ago, and we're still fighting to bring it to the light. It still needs to be investigated. But the fact of the matter is that her body was seen being brutalized and beaten by a Metro police officer named Lila Morris, who I found her name a year and a half ago, and still nobody knows it, beating her with a stick violently as she lay there unconscious. So, there's a lot of speculation on how Roseanne Boyland died and never an investigation done, except people like me, citizen journalists, who could only piece together what has been released and stuff that we've obtained. Not that the government has given it to us, stuff that that slipped through the cracks that we've obtained, like body camera footage of her being beaten by this policewoman. And if you see some of this footage, it's like you can't even watch it. Like you can't even imagine some of the pain these people, they were being literally crushed to death. Mm-hmm. There's this human pile of people that the police caused, and the police literally continued to gas and tear gas, and they wouldn't let this pile break up. So finally, when the pile untangles itself, Roseanne Boyland is left there laying on the floor, and so is Philip Anderson. And Philip Anderson was unconscious. He gets pulled away by Trump supporters. I guess they did CPR on him, and he actually was resuscitated. Back to life. Hence, why didn't the January 6th committee simply just do an investigation, an unbiased investigation? Somebody died. There was a trample. Somebody
Well, not only. So going back
and
to
less than lethal. They call this stuff less than lethal gases, and it's not. Like, I've sat in these criminal court hearings and I've listened to testimony by these officers. Roseanne Boyland, wrapping this back around to her lungs were full of it in her autopsy report. Like, she was full of this gas.
Okay.
Full of this gas. Not to mention broken bones.
What was declared as the cause of death?
The cause of death was just first they released that she died of a drug overdose, and that was proven.
I remember hearing that.
That wasn't true, and that was actually the government.
I remember hearing that it was also a lie. I remember later discovering it was a lie.
It was a lie. And then they said she was trampled by Trump supporters or whatever, and that's a lie. It was a combination of just being under the pile, breathing in the gases. They don't know, how do you prove that Lila Morris beating her had anything to do with her death? We don't know. An investigation has to be had.
Was there an autopsy, or was there an autopsy report that you had asked?
There was an autopsy report that just said it was basically a combination, she had breathing in all these fumes, asphyxiation. She had a battered her body was battered, but they don't know if that contributed to it or not.
They didn't have one cause of death listed?
The first cause of death listed was that she had a drug overdose.
Oh.
Which was proven. Her parents ordered a second autopsy report. So they said it was a drug overdose, from what I remember. Yes, a drug overdose and methamphetamine overdose. Absolutely not true. Her parents literally had to sue. We tried to sue as well, the Metropolitan Police, to release.
That's actually crazy.
It's crazy that her parents.
Methamphetamine? Right. I mean, that's crazy.
First, they tried to say it was fentanyl. But then, I guess they got her blood report back, and they're like, okay, what can we point this at? Because she had an Adderall prescription. Her parents, after we showed them the footage of her being beaten by Lila Morris, who I do believe, if there was any chance of CPR reviving Roseanne, Lila Morris knocked that out. I'm not going to say, I don't know, again. But an investigation should be done. Her parents, at that point, called the Metro Police and said, we want our daughter's autopsy report. Because then you could order, even though they cremated her, and she was cremated in D.C.
And they did the same thing with Officer Sitnick.
They did that with everybody that died in January.
That also, I mean, again, this is what the American people need to know, and this is what they need to be outraged about. Right. I mean, this is crazy.
And they should be outraged that her family was unable to. We had to raise they had to raise money to sue for her autopsy report. They're next of kin, and order.
And the parents and the family didn't want. None of these families wanted them cremated. The government did this.
As far as I know, they were pushing the whole, let's cremate them really fast. It's COVID, blah blah blah. That was the narrative at the time. But they cremated everybody that died that day. And Roseanne Boyland, she had I guess when you do an autopsy, you save tissue and photographs. So her family finally was able to obtain those, photographs and whatnot. And they got a second opinion. And the second opinion said like, okay, it could have been a combination of things, but really nothing conclusive.
And the other people who died and what they died from. So Ashley Babbitt.
Right.
She was
shot. We all saw that.
We all saw that by the Secret Service.
By the Capitol Police officer, quote unquote, Michael Byrd, who's a horrific person and has taken absolutely no responsibility for this. No real investigation has been done. So she was shot by him and murdered. A lot of the right reaction of this crowd when you say, okay, the Patriots didn't look so good that day. It doesn't look good for them when they're hurling, things and screaming, cursing, yelling, breaking things. A lot of that footage is like around when people like Ashley Babbitt was killed inside the Capitol, when Roseanne Boylan was killed, when Victoria White was being beaten. Multiple other people were being beaten. There's video after video after video. Somebody said this and it made sense. So it was like people were being beaten and being injured. And the way I look at it,
regardless, they didn't deserve to die.
Right. They didn't deserve to die.
These are not career criminals. These are patriots. I mean, Ashley Babbitt served her country.
Yes, she did.
And
the other two gentlemen their death is more of a mystery. And
Kevin Greason and Benjamin Phillips.
Yeah, Benjamin Phillips, Kevin Greason. They supposedly died of natural causes. I mean, this makes no sense. Like, how do you just die of a heart attack, or cardiac arrest at a Trump rally? Number one, they died. They weren't even near any of the mayhem. So it wasn't even like what taxed their heart so bad that they just died on the sidewalk, To me, and a lot of people, especially around Kevin Greason, say that one of the smoke grenades landed next to him or right near him and caused his. And these smoke grenades are called less than lethal. Again, they're not less than lethal. If a smoke grenade hits you in the head, that's lethal. Yeah. And they're arbitrarily shooting them out into the crowd. There's so much video of these smoke grenades. Like they just boom, boom, shoot them. They're not targeting them at the person who's agitating. They're like, what if it lands in a baby carriage? Is that a less than lethal weapon? What if it lands on an old lady? Or in the case of what people allegedly said landed near Kevin Greason, and that's what induced his heart attack. It's not less than lethal when something explodes by your head and you have a heart attack. So people have alleged that that's how those two gentlemen died, especially Kevin Greason, because there were eyewitnesses. Again, no investigation whatsoever into it. They just deem it, natural causes, Trump supporter dead, wrap it up, tie a knot on it. He died. Too bad. We're not going to do an investigation. So these two guys died and nobody cares. Nobody knows their name. Nobody talks about it. And they've embarrassed and shamed their families to the point where their families, I've reached out to their families. I've been hung up on and told to go F myself. To be honest, because they don't trust the media. Yeah. Because of what the media has done to them. They've called their loved ones insurrectionists. They made it like they were deserving of death. Yeah. Kevin Greason, the media reported, tased himself to death. That's not even true. I don't even know where they made that up. Mm-hmm. It's upsetting, and I feel bad for their families.
It is. So just looking at those events and the questions that I just asked you is upsetting enough. But when you actually do more investigative reporting, what we are uncovering is far worse than even what we just talked about. And that is that this was a psyop. And what do you know about how this was actually orchestrated and the government's plan to actually create this?
Well, we learn more and more every day, and I even do. And believe it or not, being at these criminal trials, you learn so much because you see witnesses cross-examined and like, wow, you have to put things together and sew together puzzle pieces in your head. And like, let's just just because it's the most recent trial I've been at and it's ongoing, is the Proud Boys trial. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Proud Boys were one of the most infiltrated groups with confidential human sources. And I put out an article, I'd say like, it was the last time I was on the beach contemplating whether I should put out or not. So it was the last time it was hot, which was last summer. So in the summer of 2022, I put out an article and I was scared to put it out because I was releasing, someone leaked information, a whistleblower, on a confidential human source that was embedded in the Proud Boys that actually reported back to his FBI masters that there was no plan whatsoever. He's like, there's no plan. These guys are going there to march, maybe ward off Antifa. They're not planning to go into the Capitol. There was nothing like that. This was his report back to the FBI. And they still indicted these guys and convinced them of, and convicted them, and are trying to convict them and accuse them of, and held them on pretrial detention for 2 years now of crimes that all of their federal informants said they weren't doing. So
yeah, there's no plan, but yet they're trying to accuse them of conspiracy.
Yeah, if anything, it was, it was more than likely, and I'm convinced that it was a FBI agents, and they're infiltrating and egging on the crowd, similar to what happened with the Whitmere case.
Well, that was like the blueprint.
Right.
The Whitmore kidnapping. In fact, the field officer got moved from Michigan to DC, correct? Who then ran this operation.
I don't have, like, they keep it completely under seal and lock and key. In this Proud Boys case, which I call, it's a really big case, they haven't yet had these people on the stand. And these people they're trying to prevent from going on the stand. And the defense attorneys actually want to bring these quote unquote confidential human sources or FBI infiltrators. They know their identity. They're under seal right now. They are trying to bring them to the stand so that they could cross-examine them and get them under oath and say, did my client, Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys, plan to go into the Capitol that day? And if this person has to tell the truth, they're going to say, no, he didn't.
Yeah.
But that's why the government doesn't want to bring on their own witnesses to the stand. And they actually filed a motion, which is crazy, to keep, I think, seal off the courtroom from media. And from what I believe, prevent the defense from cross-examining confidential human sources or FBI infiltrators. Because they don't want the truth to come out.
Of course not.
I don't know what the truth is. I would like to be in there in the courtroom when these infiltrators are actually cross-examined, but they're trying to keep it sealed and they're trying to keep them off the date. Like the government doesn't even want their own confidential human sources questioned on the stand because they don't even want them to tell the truth. Because the truth is there was no planning by Trump supporters to storm the Capitol. If anything, it was probably egged on by their own FBI agents. And that's the truth. And that truth needs to come out. And they're trying by any means possible to make that, stay, under lock and key. I think they tried to say they wanted to seal the information that they got from the January 6th committee for 50 years. Well,
that should be the red flag to everybody. We've seen that 50-year. We've seen them in the Pfizer documents, and with the judge not allowing that to happen, and all the reports that are being written by all these sort of citizen doctors, like citizen journalist doctors who are doing their own analysis and looking at all the data that Pfizer tried to suppress. And we've seen that with the Kennedy assassination. Seal it for 50 years. Why? Because the government is involved and they had a hand in this. Same thing. What do you know about Ray Epps and who is he?
Ray Epps. So Ray Epps, I always was like, I was never, only until recently until I started looking at really until I was in the Proud Boys courtroom, did I really start buying into the Ray Epps thing. Because I always was like, okay, I was uncertain if Ray Epps was just a distraction. Because the government, they do that. They put in these distractions so people let's fixate on Ray Epps while all this stuff is going on over here. And there's these other informants that we should be fixating on. So I was always on the fence about Ray Epps until being at this Proud Boys trial, when I was sitting in the courtroom and I'm watching a video that literally has a glitch in it. And I'm like, what? Why is that video? It was a survey. It was the camera that was on the Capitol. That's part in the 14,000 hours of discovery. So the Capitol has all these CCTV cameras on them. And why would a CCTV camera have this picture, what looks like an old TV all of a sudden go?
Yeah, I saw the video. I saw.
So just picture that on the opportune moment when Ray Epps breaches a fence with his group of people, and you could see him kind of explaining to them. There's another CCTV video I posted where you could see more clearly. It's the moment when he's telling them, all right, my friend analyzed the video and he's a video expert on this. He's saying it's almost like he's saying pick up the fence, because those fences, and I went to actually look at the Capitol. I walked around the Capitol a few weeks ago and you could see the holes in the ground. They're permanent holes where they put these very cheap fences in. These fences are like dog fences. They're the type of iron that you could just bend and break that's hollow. And they're 3 feet tall, if that. So these are not security fences of any means, but literally you don't even have to knock them over. You could just pick them up right out of the ground. You know what I mean? So it was almost like you could see Ray Epps kind of making a motion with his hands like this. This is speculation now, but this is if you zoom in on the video, it's almost like he's explaining, oh, just pick them up or knock them over. And then him and his group go through. And that's when this glitch happens on the video. And I'm like, this just can't be a coincidence. There's no digital anomaly coincidence like this that just happens to be when Ray Epps walks in, literally the same second. So my friend next to me, who's a video expert on J6, he's literally watched tens of thousands of videos and hours of this stuff behind the scenes, was sitting next to me. I'm like, what the hell's up with that glitch? He's like, holy that's when Ray Epps walks in. And like, we have to like find out if the original video has the glitch on it. So somebody leaked the original video to us, and we saw it, and it doesn't have the glitch on it. So the prosecution in the courtroom is putting up this video with this fake glitch. It's like they edited it on. The original video they had access to didn't have it on, and it's just insane. So I'm like,
again, they did this with the Kennedy assassination. We're finding out.
Right.
They videotaped the Zapruder film of the limo continuing to go on, but the limo actually stopped, and the kill shot came from the sewer. So like, it's crazy.
No, it is. And it sounds like, oh my God, it's not, this is just factual.
No.
The people who are the conspiracy theorists are the prosecution and the Department of Justice, in saying that a drinking fraternity tried to plan an insurrection with the president to overturn that's the conspiracy theory, and then all of these people were insurrectionists, when the truth of the matter is.
And the basic question, I mean, Ray Epps is in a lot of videos. I mean, I recently saw the one that you had sent me with the glitch, but I've seen him in a ton of videos instigating. So the government is going after people. They want to arrest thousands of people. And yet one person who's in many videos getting, instigating has not been arrested.
It's really important for them. And I figured this out a long time ago, to tie the Proud Boys to this case. And this involves Ray Epps, and I'll explain why. They need to find a group so they could say it was a seditious conspiracy. Donald Trump, they used and this is going to tie back to Ray Epps and why they're doing this. Donald Trump said in a debate with Joe Biden, who basically kept saying, "Oh, are you going to condemn the Proud Boys? Proud Boys, stand up, stand by," or whatever he said. They fought the defense and the prosecution like crazy whether they could show the jury as part of evidence that piece of video footage, to say that it was on the behest of Donald Trump that these Proud Boys, quote unquote, tried to overthrow the government. So so they need to make the connection with the Proud Boys from Trump, because their obvious agenda is to keep Trump out of office for whatever the reason, or anybody like him, and to shut the voices up of anybody that believes in similar America First ideals. That's what I believe. And the Proud Boys are just their stupid scapegoats to get to this. So there's a Proud Boy named Joe Biggs. He's was second in command pretty much to Enrique Tarrio of the drinking fraternity, literally like picking out the bar nights. He is the guy they're trying to paint as the fake Ray Epps. He's the guy that they're trying to say was the one who is doing what Ray Epps was doing. And it's really important for them to say that all of this was instigated by the Proud Boys, by this Joe Biggs character, and not Ray Epps, because Joe Biggs is part of this club that they're trying to tie that pretty much worshipped Donald Trump at one point in history. So there's a moment before the breach you mentioned, which is called the second breach at the fence, the first breach, which you mentioned before, that they showed at the January 1st committee, the January 1st unselect committee hearing, the very first one, they showed a moment where Joe Biggs is whispering something to Ryan Samsel, who is the one, they're tying this all together by the weakest little strings, like dental floss strings that could be ripped apart. They're just trying to make this connect the dots by association. So they're saying, here is this guy, Joe Biggs, who's a Proud Boy, whispering, he's saying something to this Ryan Samsel, who Ryan Samsel then proceeds to go and knock over the first bike rack that they're calling the first breach, which is just basically a couple idiotic guys knocking over a bike rack. There was nothing more to it than that, except that they forgot to mention that Ray Epps spoke to Ryan Samsel after Joe Biggs put his arm over him and was really saying something to him right before he knocked over that bike rack. Now, I've spoken to a number of people who've spoken to Ryan Samsel, but what he said to Joe Biggs Joe Biggs was a InfoWars star. Mm-hmm. And he said, and they were smiling. It was a friendly conversation. He said to him, "Oh, I love you, man." Like he had seen him on TV. Like it was like as if he was seeing Alex Jones, and and it was a moment like that they tried to, the January 6th committee tried to misconstrue and say, what was he saying to him? So the FBI basically, and this is a fact, and I'm going to put this out one day and I'm going to prove it, armbarred Ryan Samsel in an interrogation into saying that Joe Biggs, because this was in a New York Times report a year ago, which was fake. There was a leaked document to them saying that he said to Ryan Samsel, "I'm going to shoot you if you don't go through that fence," which is the dumbest thing anyone's ever heard. Anyone with common sense knows that did not happen. That's dumb. When the reality is, he said to him, "Oh, I know you, man, on InfoWars." Yeah. All right. They split up. then he continues walking forward. Then over comes Ray Epps, who I've heard, and I know this, granted it's hearsay, but I've heard it through people who have been locked up with Ryan Samsel, even sharing a cell with him, was the one who told him to push through that fence.
Yeah.
And then a short second later, he pushes through the fence. And he told people, Ryan Samsel has told people, and I'd rather just save this for an article because I still want to break the story of of who and why he said that. But he was basically armbarred into saying that because they're trying so desperately to, like, basically the FBI said to him, like, we don't want any information on Ray Epps. Forget about that guy. He's an old grandpa. Just forget him. We want this guy, Joe Biggs. Like, hint, hint, you'll get an easier sentence. Hint, hint. You're doing it. Didn't he tell you to break through this fence? So that's basically how that ties in. They're trying to make Joe Biggs like Ray Epps because he's a Proud Boy, and then they could convict him for seditious conspiracy because he needs a group around him. Then they could eventually try to prevent Trump from running again. I don't know what the hell their agenda is with this. But yes, like you said, Ray Epps is the one instigating the whole time. And I sat in the Proud Boys trial, and they're trying to say that Joe Biggs was the one instigating the whole time. And in reality, everybody knows it was Ray Epps, and everybody knows Ray Epps is living in a trailer somewhere in Colorado. The leftist media has gotten his back, so we know that there's a red flag there. So he must be he must be diabolical. Yeah. So, and he's still not arrested, and he is seen on numerous occasions as the first person breaching with his group, egging people on the 5th and the 6th.
Yeah.
So, I never bought into that story just because I'm like, I don't, I need proof, but it wasn't until I sat in that courtroom and saw that video glitch with my own eyes and saw that it's literally like the attorneys have to ask the judge's permission to mention Ray Epps' name in the courtroom.
That's
like, I'm
crazy.
not making this up. So I'm not even allowed to mention his name in the courtroom. It's bizarre why they're protecting this guy. So, he's probably an FBI asset at the very least.
I've been following this story, and 100%. And I mean, the whole January 6th, while they hate Donald Trump, it's really us they hate. It's the awakening populace that is the biggest threat to this corrupt establishment. And, they need to squash us on every level. I mean, I see that.
Well, they're afraid of the people, and they're afraid of the people that Donald Trump ignited and the sentiment of those people, which is obviously a majority of the people. And so this huge majority of people that it's very scary to them, that is anti-establishment that he awakened, that before were like feeding themselves like Doritos watching reality TV on a Friday night. Now those people are all of a sudden like, oh my God, like the new reality TV is the government. I'm paying attention. I know who Nancy Pelosi is. I know what the Speaker of the House is. I know what like all of a sudden people that never paid attention to government before that could give it like, that didn't care, like people like me, like are actually interested in researching the inner workings of the government and thinking that their voice counts.
It's insane how activated this population is. And it's amazing. And it's a threat to the establishment. Okay. So
a huge threat. You're right. And what they do is they divide, obviously, like it's goes by this like book of rules. I'm sure they've been using since the beginning of time, which is to divide everybody.
100%.
Get everybody fighting over white supremacy, over race, over transgender, drag queens. Like now there's a balloon supposedly, from China spying on us. Like, let's like throw in all these crazy, like it's almost like this most silly things ever to divide and distract people. Like, the whole, I think a lot of the stuff with Black Lives Matter, was, completely extorted by the government. And let's divide the people by using like these narratives, and it's just insane to me. Absolutely. And people fall for it, so they're dividing us so that we're all fighting with each other.
It's an age-old strategy. Absolutely. If we're distracted and divided, we're much easier to control. Absolutely. Cara, I want to be mindful of time, but I also want you to have the opportunity to tell us how we can follow you. And if people want to help support these prisoners, what could they do?
So you can follow me on Twitter, which I'm back on, at Cara Castronuova. I've been more active on there and doing Twitter spaces, which are a lot of fun. I'm glad Elon Musk, I don't 100% trust that guy yet, but right now it's good. Well, hopefully he doesn't like put a chip in his brain and change his mind.
That's next.
But, right now he's good. And then I was kicked off Twitter. I'm sorry, Facebook for life. So you cannot find me on there. But you could also find me and follow me on Gateway Pundit. Read the Gateway Pundit. It's the most organic journalism you could possibly imagine of citizen journalists that all are, completely credible. I've been reading Gateway Pundit for a long time, and they're getting better and better, and I'm writing for them. So it's a great way to follow me and see some of the work that I'm doing regarding January 6th and my investigations. And it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of pressure, a lot, because so many people are depending on us as citizen journalists and as writers to put this information out. I get leads every day. People are calling me every day with stuff, and I need help. So go to Citizens Against Political Persecution, and you could learn more about the political prisoners there. And you could send in a form to volunteer, because we always need help. And contact me on Twitter. That's actually the best way right now, or through my Cara Castronuova website, caracastronova.com, if you want help out in any way, because this is a movement and it's a citizen journalist movement. And I have people helping me from all walks of life, researching and just doing little things, and everything counts. Everything helps. And you could donate to any of the prisoners by just go on Gateway Pundit, like I said, and read some of the articles on there. Just type in political prisoner. And I always encourage people to directly donate to their Gives and Goes. Don't go through any intermediaries, because they're, I can't vouch for these intermediary organizations. Go on AmericanGulag.com. I know I'm giving a lot of information. AmericanGulag.com, or on Gateway Pundit, or any of these, and just find the actual prisoners' actual Gives and Go, and donate directly to them and to their accounts. So there's nobody in between that might possibly do something nefarious.
Great. Cara, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all the work that you do. Really,
thank you too. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
You're doing a great service to America, and thank you.